Hey, everybody, welcome to Sex is Medicine, your number one resource for holistic sex education. I am Davy Ward Erickson, your host here on this and every Thursday evening moving forward at 7 p.m. Pacific, live on Contact Talk Radio Network. You can always catch the show anytime you want to on any of our other podcasting platforms like Spotify, TuneIn, iTunes, iHeartRadio, all the major networks, all the major platforms. You can find Sex is Medicine with Davy Ward and friends. Yay! So today I invited some of my dear friends, colleagues, and former students to join me in a conversation about sexual healing for men, for male-bodied beings, for people with lingams and who identify as men. And this is a topic that we talk a lot about, sexual healing in relationship to vulva owners and vagina owners, people who identify as women. We talk a lot about sexual healing and what that looks like for women and the need for it and traumas and all of that. But it's not as often that we address this topic in relationship to people with penises. And it's just as important. All human beings who have genitals are going to need some healing in relationship to those genitals because of the society that we live in, which has all kinds of shame and fear and ignorance around our natural, normal sexual functioning. And we're taught to fear that functioning. We're taught to fear our pleasure. We're taught to fear our own bodies. And we're not given the support that we need to actually engage in sexuality with mindfulness and presence and self-love. So we want to change that. We want to change that narrative. We want to change the paradigm here on planet Earth. That's kind of what we're here to do. So I invited some friends who are experts on this topic and well-versed and have lots of mileage under their belt in the realm of sexual healing for people of all bodies. And so, yeah, so I'm going to introduce our friends. So in the top left, at least in my eye, we have Rosie Bits. Underneath Rosie in the bottom left is Karen Craig, the illustrious Karen Craig. And then right underneath me in the bottom right-hand corner, we have Lucia. So starting with you, Lucia, would you be willing to introduce yourself and kind of share a little bit about who you are and where you come from and what your area of expertise is?
Oh, sure. So my name is Lucia Vasquez. I am from the Bay Area, so from Oakland, San Francisco Bay Area in California. And I am an authentic tantric practitioner. I'm certified ACS sexologist. And I have a background in therapeutic art coaching, as well as a background in somatic healing tantric sessions. And I mainly for the past several years have been working with males. It's been about the last year and a half that I've introduced women and couples. And so, yeah, I'm very excited to be here. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Lucia. And how about you, Karen?
My name is Karen Craig. And by way of background, I too am a certified sexologist and ACS certified sexologist, an authentic Tantra practitioner, educator and coach, as well as a Tantra mastery instructor with the Institute of Authentic Tantra Education.
Yeah, she's on our crew.
So along with my husband, we own Explore Tantra, and we offer to both couples and individuals, men and women, for those who identify as male or female, we offer Tantra training. It's a holistic somatic training and healing modality. And we also work with them individually through group coaching or through, we sponsor retreats, we facilitate and host retreats, both small and large, for couples, for individuals, to bring this healing forth to the world, really.
Beautiful. And you guys have been hosting retreats, gosh, since like what, 2013, 2014, something like
I
that?
think our first one was in early 2015. So
Mm.
we started planning it in 2014 and then it was in 2015.
Yeah.
So this is 2020. So yeah, like 5 years. So like at least 10 retreats.
Yeah.
We just had our most recent one, Valentine's retreat. It was a couples retreat. And that was the Art of Intimacy retreat.
Beautiful.
And that was here in Atlanta.
Beautiful. Beautiful. And you guys are Georgia based, Atlanta based.
We are. Yeah. But because we work on Zoom platforms, you know, literally like we have clients from literally around the world.
Exactly.
Yes, like face to face, it's normally going to be, or in person, it's going to be in Atlanta.
Yeah.
Even though we will travel.
Yes. Okay. Awesome. Good to know. And how about you, Miss Rosie Bitts?
Hey, I am Rosie Bitts, and I'm a burlesque performer, and I'm a tantrika, graduate from Authentic Tantra, and a sexologist. And yeah, I host retreats as well. I did my first retreat just this past February in Bali. I do online classes. Right now it's all online. So I was lucky to have started to develop some of my online offerings before all this COVID business hit. And I work face-to-face with people teaching essentially empowered sensuality through the art form of burlesque, but also through Tantra. I work a lot with yoni owners, but I love the lingam owners as well, and have worked with both couples and individual men. And a lot of young men. I have a 25-year-old son, and so those young men tend to get referred to me and know me as Mama Rosie, or Mama Sunshine is something they call me as well. So I get a lot of young men coming in my practice looking for some advice and some clarity.
Beautiful. And so along those lines, and we'll start with you, Rosie. So what are these men looking for in regards to the support and the advice and like in general, like healing? Like what are some of the top line things that men need healing in regards to their sexuality around?
Oh, so much. And if you're talking about specifically young men right now, I don't know about the rest of you, but I'm seeing an epidemic with young men as far as erectile dysfunction. There's just such, I think they've been raised on porn, you know, having a son myself who's 25, really we had lots of open conversations about porn, and it's not something that you could avoid at all. It was like, you know, this is a better version of porn than this was the conversation. And now I'm seeing young men who are having serious sexual dysfunction and not being able to get erections when they actually have a sexual partner. Lots of issues around not understanding consent, around being trained in a way societally and through porn where they come to me later saying, I think I've sexually assaulted somebody and I didn't know, I didn't understand that this wasn't what normal sexual play was, and being heartbroken when they realize they've hurt somebody, but just not having the tools to understand until after the fact, until it's already gone down. Wow. So some deep trauma in these young men as far as what needs to be healed, not just within their bodies and connecting their mind and their heart and their lingam, but what they're also doing to their partners because of lack of understanding. Not at all, at least the men that I connect with, not at all malice. It's truly ignorance, just not understanding healthy sexuality, period.
Wow, that's huge, because they are in that position, they're unconsciously traumatizing and perpetuating trauma upon people, right? And causing this harm that they're not intending to cause, simply because they don't have education, awareness, and understanding of how to engage in healthy sexual dynamics. Like that is a tragedy for our society.
Yeah, totally. And it's so compounded. These young men go into these sexual situations already feeling a lot of fear often, and not understanding how to connect. That's compounded by, oh my goodness, is my penis going to work? What's going on with my penis? And that's their focus, rather than the focus being on pleasure and connecting with their partner, right? And then that creates this myriad of issues that result in trauma for the partner and trauma for the lingam owner.
Wow. And how about you, Lucia? Because you were sharing that you pretty much have specialized in working with men for several years, lingam owners. And so lingam, just for you guys who don't know, if you haven't heard me say this enough times, lingam equals penis. And lingam literally means wand of light. It is a tool for healing. Your penis is a tool for healing if you know how to use it properly. So Lucia helps men reclaim their lightsaber. What are some of the most common issues that you see with men who come to you in relationship to sexual healing?
I do have to agree with Rosie with regards to the PE and the ED. Premature ejaculation and erectile dysfunction is one of them. And there's two different kinds, I guess, or two different categories that I see a lot of. And one of them is men who tend to self-diagnose themselves to have it. For example, it's a man who, let's just say they've been dating for a while here, and they sparingly they have, from time to time sexual encounters, and maybe one time it didn't go so well. Maybe perhaps the partner they were with might have disclosed some information to them that was kind of a put down. So they were not satisfied. And men really take that, they beat themselves up for it. They, really, it puts them down and then starts to sometimes create nervousness, anxiousness. And so they then start to self-diagnose themselves in that they have PE or ED. And so a lot of times when I get men of that in that scenario, I always like to introduce the ocean breathing technique, just so that they can see that it's a tool to help them be more calm and lower their nervous level so that they can be more present in the moment. And many times it really, really helps. And then they realize, oh, wait a sec, I don't have it. It's just that they were really, really nervous. And that caused, some damage there. And then I deal with the other side where they do have some issues there with the PE or ED. And maybe it's been a long time, many years of having these struggles, and they've tried maybe other techniques and it didn't really work out. And so I work many times hands-on and demonstrating different tools that can be used, and essentially taking them through the entire 4 pillars of meditation, connection, movement, and pleasure, and being able to work through those things really gives them the support they need through this journey and transformation for them.
Yeah, and that that negative feedback loop for men where they have an encounter and maybe there's some performance anxiety that comes up, or whatever, nervousness, and then there's some fluctuation or issue with the erection, or maybe you come too fast, and then putting that in your mind that it's an issue or a problem or a dysfunction, and then it just keeps perpetuating itself through every circumstance, right?
Yes.
So being able to drop that mental construct and reconnect with the body and just be present is going to reinstill that confidence, right? In the way our bodies work. And so you, Karen, you had the very unique and powerful experience of going through your Tantra training with your husband and seeing all kinds of profound healing occur for him. What are some of the things that stood out for you in relationship to sexual healing for men, like what you witnessed your husband go through and that maybe you were surprised by?
I mean, so of course we were doing like life and relationship coaching before, and hosting the retreats before we went through each of us the 500 plus hours of training, which was incredible, through the Institute. And so my perspective is both from the people who come to us, and then also, of course, as you said, personally, witnessing with my husband, the changes and the profound impact for him. So with regard to him, so many things, but one thing about men is that they're also, in some senses, like victimized by the same social conditioning that we as women are. And just that porn culture and the just that push to perform that they're under, so that performance anxiety that surfaces. And there are things that I learned about my husband that I didn't know, and some of it was just things like what it meant to be in a male body, and some of the limitations around that. So, for example, I remember one time he and my son, who's 25 as well, he just turned 26, and they were talking about the fact that you can't use word, like they can't say K. Like I would say, like, okay, you can't respond K. Like that's too feminine. And I was like, whoa. And then it was like, we can't stand a certain way. You can't dress a certain way. And I had only looked at those things through a female lens. And so it really kind of drove home for me that men are also like in this box in terms of how they have to function. And so then we want them to show up from this heart space, and they're moving through the culture in every place but that space. So it's like, show up and be fully present, and, connect here, and before you connect here, and all of that. And it's like, but the rest of the way they've been taught to function is completely inconsistent with that.
And that, yeah.
No, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, and that is such a, I want to dig into that a little bit more, because from my perspective, I think that's actually one of the greatest wounds. Like in my work through the 12 years, when I was first training, I remember my mentor saying that, who was a male, I remember him saying that men are allowed two emotions, cisgendered heterosexual men, allowed two emotions, lust and anger. And that's it. Everything else is closed off and suppressed and shut down and pushed away. And also in my work, an area of greatest wounding I've seen is that men are conditioned to disassociate and disconnect from their sensuality. So even just being able to allow themselves to touch their own bodies and to feel and to sensate. And then again, that connects to the emotional healing, the emotional openness, like the ability to actually feel something beyond anger or rage or violence or lust, the ability to feel love, the ability to feel sadness, the ability to be vulnerable is like so terrifying, but also such a huge reclamation of their entire sexual selves, to be able to have the whole kaleidoscope, the whole buffet of emotional experiences is something that, like, I think our sex and our emotions are so intricately connected, right? We know this from doing somatic healing. We know that where there's a block in the body, there's usually a block in the emotion, and vice versa. And so if we as human beings are cut off from our emotional intelligence and our full range of emotion, then how does that show up in the body? What kind of sensation are we cutting ourselves off from? And
being fully present in their bodies. Like I didn't realize the degree to which men aren't fully embodied. They aren't fully present in their bodies, and the extent to which a lot of men have experienced like shame and blame and sense of guilt around their sexuality and their first experiences and subsequent experiences. And Rosie was talking about men who've crossed boundaries and they didn't realize it, and the grief, and that just adds to their sense of shame, their sense of guilt, and so that's showing up in the way that they're functioning or not functioning, or at least like dysfunctioning.
Beautiful.
So, like we had a client, and actually they came as a couple, And when we went through just something simple like the 10 spot of comfort, you know, and so we encouraged him to be comfortable, like make sure he was comfortable. That was a completely profound concept for him. He was like, nobody has ever like cared or asked or inquired about my comfort. Like, you know, and so he really got into it. It's like, nope, I think I'm at like a 7.5. Like he like really got into, you know, like really dissecting how comfortable he was. But because it was like new for him, just the idea that like he has a birthright to feel comfortable and to feel real pleasure, and for that pleasure and that comfort to be expanded.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, and for the pleasure not to just be focused on their penises, right? For the pleasure to be holistic, involve their whole bodies, involve their emotional and spiritual state. Like that is so huge. For the men who come into my burlesque classes, even though we're not focused on pleasure per se, for those men to be able to move, and usually it's like one man in a class full of women or like women and non-binary folk. And for them to just be able to share from the heart and then to be able to move sensually and to have homework every week that is around sensuality and around creativity is like, you know, because nobody's ever given them permission to do that. Like it's huge. There's not permission for men to be sensual creatures. We don't bring them flowers. We don't put the rose petals on the bed for them. We don't give them the sensual oil massage before we make love, right? And we should, because not only is it training the men to show them what it is that we want and we need, it's actually healing them and opening them to who they are as sensual beings.
And so what is the impact that you've seen when those men that you're describing, Rosie, when they are able to connect with their sensual selves and expand their wholeness or become whole human beings, not just these fragments? What is the result? What happens at the end of that?
I think these men are just more whole human beings, right? Like they're able to show up to work in a better place because they're feeling fulfilled. They're able to show up in their relationship in a new way because they're more connected with who they are, right? They are happier and they get a sense of self that is cut off. And I remember watching this while raising my son and seeing so many young men between about 16 and like 22, where they suddenly society, like, it's like, no more do you get to experience these emotions. You know, if you experience this stuff, you're a pussy. Before that, maybe we'll give you some leeway, but between 16 and 22, it's like, no, now you're a man. And so it's like reclaiming that lost part of themselves that they lost in boyhood or early manhood. That really allows them to show up fully in their lives.
Mm-hmm. And be the very thing that we as cisgender women claim that we want in our men: emotionally available, present, heart connected, open, communicative, like all the stereotypical things that in this culture it's like men don't do that and we complain about. When they're able to fully embrace their humanity, then they get to show up for us as the humans we're craving.
Yeah, absolutely. And they get to you know, be in a world where, like you were saying, there's not just two emotions, right? A world full of color rather than just black and white, which I think so many men struggle with, and so many men have to repress their true desires. And I'm not even talking about just sexual desires, but they have to repress their desires in life because it's just not supported for them.
Yeah. And how about you, Lucia? Sorry, go on, Karen.
I was going to say, even thinking about the idea that, you know, until very recently, just a year or two, it was still very acceptable to make jokes about men's penis size, right? Like the level of shaming culturally is pretty huge.
And I have been guilty of that in the past, I will say. And, you know, and then I had a relationship with a man who had a fairly small lingam. And I got to feel like him, and he was an emotionally open male too. And he would like send me energy from his heart down through his central channel and out his lingam and into my yoni. And I was like, wow. like I got to feel his energetic cock. And it was amazing. And that was like where it really, really, really started to click for me. Like I knew it intellectually before that the lingam was a tool for healing, but like having this experience with this man who physically was not large, but emotionally and energetically was huge, and how I could feel it, like literally, like it was like he was fucking me up in my throat, you know, with this light, and how powerful and potent that is when a man is able to integrate his heart with his genitals, how he truly becomes a healer, a sexual healer, just from integrating that emotional with his sexual. Yeah. Yeah. And so, and Karen, you were going to say something. What were you going to share?
So what I was thinking about was like, to accomplish all of this, men need to feel safe. And, of course we think about being safe as women, but there's a lot of an absence of safety for a man moving through the world. And so just like when you're talking about that, like, teasing about a man, or it being humorous that he's not well endowed, or that he has ED or PE, and so really like creating a space for him. So this is what we teach both to couples, like how to create a safe space in the relationship so that a man can come from that heart space and shed all of those things that have been weighing him down, and then also as practitioners able to create and offer that safe space so a man truly feels safe to shed all of those things.
Beautiful. Yes. And that is such a salient point, and I'm going to circle back to that in just a minute. And Lucia, I'd love to hear, so with your work with men and helping them shed illusions and reclaim and reintegrate their sexuality into their humanity, what are some of the beneficial results that you've seen throughout that process and on the other end of that process?
Yeah, so I work one-on-one with males, and a lot of times there's this idea that men tend to place the pleasure before the healing. They tend to just take it, right? And so when they learn, how to address the issues that are there that come and arise, which is all this, the cultural shaming that, you've discussed here, knowing and understanding that men do have traumas there. They have been through abuse. They have been through violence. And if they haven't been through it themselves, it's somewhere in their direct ancestral lineage, somewhere down the line of a history of it, which can sometimes then come up for them as they're going through these, their practices. And so it's really important to be aware that they need to go through the healing. And once they go through that healing process and those blocks become removed, then they start to feel safe in the present moment. And when they feel safe in the present moment, it's like a huge eye-opening, right? And they are able to connect with themselves and be able to experience what that is, what it feels like. Mm-hmm. And now they can then take that and learn how to give. Instead of taking, now they're learning how to give love, how to give space, how to give foreplay, how to give the orgasms, right? And so it's a huge thing. It really is. What was I going to add about that? So with regards to if they have a partner, just acknowledging that their partner can also more than likely have gone through some kind of personal or cultural shaming. And so just to kind of be aware of that, because sometimes they tend to leave it out.
Yeah. And that point of safety is huge, because we can't heal if we don't feel safe. Right. And so as you were talking, Lucia, it was really present in my awareness how vital it is for those of us who are in the industry to be able to do the work that we do with all humans, because we're able to provide that reliable safety, right?
Oh,
We're
yes.
able to offer therapeutic healing relationships because of the work that we've done. But that brings to me the question of like, well, you know, there's the whole Me Too movement, and historically, you know, patriarchy and all these wounds that we've suffered as women. And, you know, I know many of us have been sexually abused or assaulted throughout our lives. So what did it take for you to get to the place where you could hold space for male healing? Because I know for myself, for many years, I was in so much pain, there was no space. Like I could not hold space for your healing because I'm a victim. You are the abuser. You know, that was how I interpreted men. Like, you are the abuser, just societally and individually. You have abused me. So I can't hold space for your healing when I need to go through my own healing process. So what did it take for you, Rosie, to be able to get to the place to be able to hold that kind of deep, empathic, non-judgmental space in working with male-bodied beings?
Well, I think my journey in that space really started when I had my son. I was a young single mom, and I recognized that this journey that he and I had together was not going to work if I had such a deep trauma response to men. So that was really my first conscious decision about healing my past with men, was around wanting to be a mother for a son who wouldn't be carrying wounds from me. He'd have other wounds, but hopefully not wounds in this way from me. And then it's really been about allowing myself to be angry and to be hurt and to experience outrage and to go through all the emotions and not devalue them, not push them aside. But, you know, even now, like, bring up the truth of what happens in my relationships with men, good and bad. And through that, it's sort of like a balancing, right? Through allowing myself to feel the emotion and to be hurt and outraged, it also gives me the chance to make it not so personal.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? Like, it's not like all men doing this to me. It's like, this situation happened. I'm allowed to be angry. I'm allowed to hurt and grieve. And then I can let it go. And I also have a deep recognition that the patriarchy serves no one. It does not serve men either. It hurts them as much as it hurts us. And it's really all humans together. You know, we need to do this work in collaboration to have better connection, period, right? It can't be just women, just men, just non-binary, just trans. All of us together, we're in here as a human family figuring this shit out.
Yes. Amen, sister. How about for you, Karen? What inspired you, or how did you get to the place where you were like, yes, I can hold this open, empathic space for, you know, the masculine in general?
I think, just as Rosie said, my perspective is that we're all like victimized in a sense by the way the culture is structured, both men and women. And another piece of it is like not feeling that great sense of being different and really recognizing the sameness. So even like when we're teaching, and you know, I'm teaching that up to 3 months gestation, we literally are the same in the womb. And it isn't until like that second trimester that, you know, there are those changes. And so male genitalia versus female genitalia. And just the extent to which, like, you know, one isn't from Mars, the other's not from Venus, like we're all from here.
Yeah.
And so because of that, and I also have a son, and he was my firstborn. So, you know, kind of the same thing, like, so that can't be my enemy. Like, that's my son. Like, I'm seeing his vulnerability. I'm seeing the things that hurt him as a child, or, you know, the things that he was fearful of or whatever. So I got to actually see a male child, you know, and not just grown men who were doing these terrible things. So I think really at its essence, it's just not feeling that, or having that sense of this big difference, that we really are all much more alike than different.
Yeah. Beautiful. 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 And how about you, Lucia? Because you specialized in working with men, and I know a little bit about your history. And I mean, I don't think we can grow up as vagina owners in North American culture and not experience some form of shit in relationship to the male-female dynamic. But what inspired you to focus so directly on sexual healing for men?
Oh gosh, I was sitting here thinking about that, and and I am a survivor of sexual abuse, and I think for me it happened when I started working more hands-on with the tantric bodywork sessions, that I started um, feeling in the energy body things come up. And in anything that I've ever done, even previous to anything tantra, no matter what I've done, it's always been about me needing to help others. And so when I help others, I heal my own self. And so when I started doing the body work, without even talking, there would be a deep connection. Something would rise, and so I started finding out that I naturally started holding a lot of space for the males, because a lot of similar things would come up for them, and a huge thing is the communication. The communication, not having that sense of safety to be able to communicate whatever the concern may be with their partner, and them being able to communicate and letting it vent out, and me being able to hold the space was very rewarding for the both of us. And so I think that the more I did it, the more I started to see that, hey, they kind of are like us women. They are very sensitive. They do have emotions. They do share similar, concerns and issues. They're just not voicing it. They're not feeling safe enough inside to, because of all the shaming and whatever traumas they've experienced, or perhaps they're in not such a good, relationship. And so there's all these things that, is building up inside of them, just like us. And so for me, it was that connection.
Yeah, beautiful. And I love that you said that, like, through helping others, we can find our own healing, or you found your own healing. Because I know very similar for me, though I very much I chose and needed to, for my own well-being, take a very clear break from male energy for about 1.5 years while I processed some of the unresolved trauma in my body, and the anger and just all of that, like felt all the feels, felt all my emotions in relationship to that. And then at the end of that, I remember having a completely different relationship where I no longer felt victimized. I no longer felt threatened or persecuted. So, like, a very simple example, like in the past, if a man would give me a compliment, I always felt put upon. I always felt invaded and intruded upon. And I know that there's all kinds of, social conversation about complimenting women and all that stuff. But just my energetic experience previous to this healing was, it felt like an assault. Whereas after this healing, it was something that I could just receive and appreciate, and just like, thank you. And there was just no, like, whether or not it was appropriate in a social context or not, it's not that. It was just the way I reacted to it. It was no longer a threat. Even if it was delivered in a way that I wouldn't have preferred, or that would be technically like rude or whatever, I could just acknowledge it and be present and connect with the purity of the intention that was coming through, because I no longer had this filter of pain happening. And it was from there that it just naturally arose that just in my work, I started, just more men started being interested in working with me to help heal their relationship to their sexuality and reclaim their empowerment and learn to separate orgasm from ejaculation, just all those wonderful things that we can do as sexologists who specialize in tantric methods. So, and it was from working with them more directly that like I was really able to observe how wounded, we keep saying that word, but how tragic, that's what I'm looking for, how tragic that for the first time when I was teaching a man lingam massage, that he would cry because nobody ever told him that he had permission to touch his penis this way.
Yeah.
Like that just broke my heart. And I would see that over and over and over again, literal tears of like relief and gratitude and celebration, but also pain that like, I've gone 50 years and I didn't know that I could connect with my body in this way. And that's criminal to me, right? And then, you know, how essential that is for wholeness as human beings, being able to touch our bodies and, you know, experience joy and pleasure without fear or shame, how integral that is to our human development. And then how those men were able to bring that openness and freedom back to their relationships. And that's the other thing that I got to see throughout the years is I love the work that we do because it's like a window into the soul of sexual humanity, right? We get to see behind the scenes. And I got to see this beautiful devotion and dedication that these men had to supporting their partners in pleasure and the agony that they didn't know how to do it. But that was like, they wanted to be able to support their female partners in like ecstasy. And they had that's what they wanted, but they had no idea how to go about doing that because I didn't have the education and they didn't, you know, they couldn't last longer than 30 seconds or whatever was going on for them. So, you know, that really, I really, really feel that the key to healing humanity meaning being able to live on this planet without trying to fucking kill each other. That's what I mean by healing humanity or the planet. The key to that really is being able to heal our relationships to our bodies and each other, right? Yeah. Yeah. So, where do you see, what would you say to the partners of men? So like, you know, we often in our work, sometimes we work with couples, but very often we work with individuals as well. So what would you say to the women of these male partners who do want to learn and they do want to grow and they do want, you know, to experience more of the totality of their humanity? What would you say to, like, what's one thing that each of us can do as women without any training, but what's one thing that each of us can do to facilitate and support that healing, that sexual healing for the men in our lives? I'm going to start with you, Karen.
It sounds so simple and it doesn't require any training, but just even asking, what do you need? You know, so that what are you feeling? What do you need? Because so many men, I mean, same thing, like they don't feel anyone's ever asked them what they need. Even though as women, you know, we tend to be nurturers and, you know, take care of everyone around us. But still, I think a lot of men don't feel that they're really like being seen and what their true needs are. And so like really from a heart space, like asking that question, like a lot of men haven't even really been asked that question and haven't even connected with, well, how do I really feel? You know, if it's not anger and it's not lust, then, you know, the other 84,000 emotions, like what do I feel? And what are my needs? And so like helping to teach women how to really connect with their husbands in a different way. Or their partners in a different way, their male partners in a different way, so that it's not just kind of like what I call mothering, you know, like kind of doing things for, but really connecting in a very different way on a real heart level. Yeah. So that's what I would say.
Beautiful. Thank you. How about you, Rosie?
I would say like the easiest thing that I've used and seen work with partners that I've had or with clients is words of love. So easy, but speaking words of love to your partner's lingam and just like building it up, like, you know, not being inauthentic, like totally taking your heart experience of what you feel about them as a sexual being, as a sensual being, and telling them what you think of their lingam, and truly worshiping that lingam, which I think for me, that took a long time to get to a place where I could worship a lingam, where I felt like as a feminist woman that literally I could get on my knees and feel super comfortable being like, I love your penis. This is the most beautiful healing scepter I've ever seen. Every part of this is perfect, right? But doing something like that is so empowering for a man, like just builds them up. And I've seen huge healing from erectile dysfunction and premature ejaculation just from those words of love. It's been massive. And if you can add in some level of sensual play rather than a focus on sex or orgasm, but giving your partner just like a groin massage, touching them in places that they're not used to being touched, or bringing them flowers, right? And adding in that level of sensuality mixed with those words of love, like that can be enough to heal huge problems.
Wow, tantric speech.
Yeah.
Yeah. How about you, Lucia? What is one thing that you think partners can do, female partners can do to support their men in sexual healing?
I feel as though it's really important for them to be able to know how to hold empathy for them. A lot of times we like to fix everything, right? And we like to give our opinions, and it's, it could be a lot. And so just learning how to be there for them non-judgmentally, and hold that empathy, hold that space, and using simple things such as please and thank you, gratitude, really, really helps in a relationship.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Yay. Awesome. Well, thank you guys for this amazing conversation today. I am certain it's going to be very impactful for people around the world to hear this, the scoop, the feminine perspective on sexual healing for men. So for those listeners who feel drawn to work with you, where can they find out more? I'll start with you, Rosie.
You can find me at www.rosiebits.com. I'm offering all sorts of online stuff right now. One day we'll have retreats again in the future, but right now you can find me online, private sessions, or I've got classes, lots of good stuff going on.
Beautiful. Excellent. How about you, Karen? Where can people find out more?
Tantric.com. My husband and I often work together, but we also coach and teach separately. So whatever is needed, we can bring. And then on the other platforms, Twitter, Instagram, what's the other one? I'm missing one.
It's Facebook.
Facebook, yeah. So Explore Tantra.
ExploreTantra.com. Yes. And how about you, Lucia? What's your website?
You can find me on embodied elements-wp.com, and that's embodied elements for wellness and pleasure.
Beautiful. And all of your website URLs will be under this video when we make it live to the world. So you'll be able to contact each of our incredible speakers directly. And of course, you can always find me at authentictantra.com. You can also find Karen there as well if you're interested in going through our Tantra Mastery training. She is one of our instructors with the Institute. So yeah, thank you everyone for joining us this evening. And again, we have just upped the ante. We are broadcasting every Thursday at 7 p.m. Pacific, every Thursday evening from this point until we don't know when. So tune in to learn more about how you can start utilizing your sexuality as a form of medicine, healing, empowerment, and personal growth in every area of your life. See you next week.